The winter morning of 1885 hit Wyoming territory like God's own punishment. Big Sam McKenna pulled his coat tighter as his gelding picked through the snowdrifts along Devil's Creek crossing, checking for fence breaks after the blizzard. His horse shied at something dark against the white drift, probably dead cattle, Sam figured with a heavy heart. He dismounted, boots crunching through the crust, expecting to find frozen beef. Instead, he found tiny footprints in the snow, leading nowhere. Child-sized prints that started from nothing and ended at his fence post in a small, impossibly still bundle. Sam's heart stopped. The bundle was wrapped in a torn red scarf, curled tight against the fence like a lost kitten seeking shelter. He knelt, fearing the worst, and touched the small shoulder. She was alive. Barely. Green eyes fluttered open in a face blue with cold, and through cracked lips came a whisper that would change everything. "Please don't send me back." Sam saw the bruises on her neck, the withered left arm tucked protectively against her chest, the terror in those young eyes. Without a word, he wrapped his heavy coat around her tiny frame and lifted her onto his horse. As they rode toward his ranch, 3 riders appeared on the distant ridge, watching through spyglasses. Sam didn't know it yet, but those riders carried news that would change everything, including a warrant with his name on it. Maria Santos heard the hoofbeats before Sam's voice calling from the yard. She wiped flour from her hands and rushed to the kitchen door, gasping when she saw the bundle in Sam's arms. "Dios mío, what happened?" "Found her at Devil's Creek Crossing," Sam said grimly, carrying the child to the warmest spot near the cook stove. Half frozen and beaten near to death. Maria's motherly instincts took over immediately. She cleared the kitchen table, spread clean blankets, and began examining the girl with gentle hands. The child flinched at every touch, eyes darting between Sam and Maria like a trapped animal. "How old you reckon?" Sam asked quietly. 12, maybe 13. And look at these old bruises." Maria's voice hardened. "This didn't happen yesterday, Senor Sam. This child has been hurt for a long time." Sam rode hard to fetch Doc Patterson, leaving Maria to tend the girl. When he returned with the doctor, half the town seemed to know already. That's how it was in Clearwater Springs. News traveled faster than prairie fire. Doc Patterson's examination revealed the full horror: frostbite on her fingers and toes, malnutrition, and evidence of systematic abuse stretching back years. The withered left arm appeared to be a birth defect that had made her a target. "Who is she?" Doc asked, cleaning his spectacles. "Name's Emma Hutchins," Sam replied. "Vera Hutchins' stepdaughter. Vera claimed the girl ran off 3 days ago." "Ran off?" Maria's voice rose. "This child didn't run. She was thrown away like garbage." By evening, the kitchen table had become M's sanctuary. She still wouldn't speak, but she'd stopped flinching when Maria brought her warm milk. Sam sat across from her, whittling a small wooden horse, saying nothing but making his presence known. The girl's eyes followed his every movement, not with fear now, but with curious wonder. Nobody had ever been this patient with her before. As full darkness settled over the ranch, the sound of hoofbeats thundered toward the house. Sam stepped onto the porch, hand instinctively moving toward his rifle. 3 riders emerged from the darkness: Banker Cornelius Whitman, Sheriff Tom Davies, and a man Sam didn't recognize carrying official-looking papers. That's when Sam McKenna learned that kindness in the territory of Wyoming could be considered a federal crime. The 3 men reined up at the porch, their horses' breath steaming in the cold air. Whitman, dressed in his usual black suit and bowler hat, looked more like an undertaker than a banker. Sheriff Davies seemed uncomfortable, avoiding Sam's eyes. "Evening, Sam," Whitman said, not dismounting. "We've come about the Hutchins child." "Have you now?" Sam's voice was level, but his shoulders squared. "And what business might that be?" The third man, thin and sharp-featured, spoke up. "I'm Deputy U.S. Marshal Pike. I understand you've taken unauthorized custody of a minor child belonging to Mrs. Vera Hutchins." Inside the house, Em had moved to the window. When she heard her stepmother's name, her face went white as the snow outside. Maria placed protective arms around the girl's shoulders. "The child was abandoned," Sam said simply. "Found her half dead in a snowbank. Mrs. Hutchins filed a report," Marshal Pike continued. "Claims the girl stole money and ran away. She's demanding the child's immediate return." Whitman leaned forward in his saddle. "Sam, I understand your charitable impulse, but you can't just take in strays without proper legal channels. It sets a dangerous precedent." "Dangerous to who?" "To the social order we've worked to build here," Whitman replied smoothly. "What happens when every Tom, Dick, and Harry decides they know better than legal guardians? You're opening doors that ought to stay shut." Sheriff Davies finally spoke. "Sam, I've known you 20 years, but the law is the law. Without proper custody proceedings, you're technically guilty of kidnapping." Sam studied the three men, saw the fear in Davies' eyes, the calculation in Whitman's, the cold duty in Pike's. Inside the house, Em tugged at Maria's sleeve and whispered her first words since the rescue. "Are they going to make me go back?" "Not if I have anything to say about it," Sam called through the window, loud enough for the girl to hear. Marshal Pike straightened. "Mr. McKenna, I'm ordering you to surrender the child to Mrs. Hutchins' custody within 24 hours, or face federal charges." "And I'm telling you that child stays here until a proper investigation is done," Sam replied. "Whatever Vera Hutchins calls herself, she ain't fit to raise a dog, much less a little girl." The three men exchanged glances. Whitman's voice took on a threatening edge. "Sam, think about what you're risking. Your ranch loans, your standing in this community, your freedom, all for a damaged child who isn't even your blood. My blood or not, she's under my protection now, and that's the end of it." As the officials rode away, defeated for the moment, Em appeared at Sam's side on the porch. She slipped her small hand into his calloused one and asked in a voice barely above a whisper, "Mr. Sam, what if she comes for me anyway?" In the distance, storm clouds were gathering, both in the sky and among the hearts of men. Lightning flickered on the horizon, and for just a moment Sam could swear he saw 3 riders watching from the ridge, the same ones from that morning, but when he looked again, they were gone. The next few days settled into a gentle rhythm that Em had never known existed. She watched Sam's every movement with the intensity of someone learning a new language, the language of kindness. Each morning, Maria would set a place for her at the kitchen table. Each evening, Sam would sit across from her, sometimes reading aloud from his late wife's books, sometimes just whittling by lamplight. Em began to relax her guard, small degree by small degree. "You got a good head for letters," Sam observed one evening, watching Em sound out words from a primer. "Smarter than most folks give you credit for, I reckon." Em's withered arm, which she usually kept hidden, slowly became part of their daily routine. Maria showed her how to hold things steady with it, while her good hand did the work. Sam never stared, never pitied, never made it seem like anything more than what it was, part of who she was. The real test came on a cold Thursday night, when Sam's prize mare, Duchess, went into labor. Something was wrong. The foal was coming breech, and both mother and baby were in danger. "Get Doc Patterson," Sam told Maria, but the storm outside was howling like a banshee. "No time," Em said suddenly. It was the most she'd spoken since arriving. "I can help." Before Sam could object, Em was beside him in the stall, her small hands somehow knowing exactly where to go. She'd seen difficult births before, back when her father was alive and they had livestock. Her withered arm held the mare's head steady, while her good hand helped guide the foal. 20 minutes later, a healthy colt stood on wobbly legs, and Em was crying, not from pain, but from joy. It was the first time Sam had seen her smile. "Well, I'll be," he said quietly. "Looks like we got ourselves a horse doctor." That Sunday, Sam made a decision that sent ripples through Clearwater Springs. He took Em to church. The congregation's reaction was immediate and harsh. Whispers followed them down the aisle like wind through dry leaves. The proper ladies, led by Constance Whitman, made a point of turning their backs when Em tried to smile at their children. During the service, Em sat ramrod straight, her chin up, despite the cold shoulders. After the final hymn, she walked out with dignity that shamed the adults around her. "They don't know you yet," Sam told her as they drove home. "Give 'em time." "They don't want to know me?" Em replied with wisdom beyond her years. That afternoon brought an unexpected visitor, Tom McKenna, Sam's nephew from Denver. Tom was 25, well-dressed, and had always assumed he'd inherit the McKenna ranch when his childless uncle passed on. "Uncle Sam," Tom said, eyeing Em with barely concealed irritation, "we need to talk about family matters." They talked, all right. Tom made his position clear. Taking in the girl was a mistake that would cost Sam dearly. She was damaged goods, he said, a liability that would drain resources and bring shame to the McKenna name. "Family's about more than blood, son," Sam replied quietly. "Not according to the law," Tom shot back, "and not according to common sense." That night, Em suffered her first nightmare since arriving at the ranch. She woke screaming about ropes and voices telling her she was worthless. Sam found her crumpled on the floor, reliving horrors that no child should carry. He sat with her until dawn, saying nothing, just being present. Sometimes Em whispered fragments of her past, beatings for dropping dishes with her bad arm, being locked in the cellar for days, being told repeatedly that she was a burden no one could love. As the sun rose, Em looked up at Sam with eyes that had seen too much. "Why are you being kind to me?" "Because you deserve kindness," Sam replied simply. But even as their bond strengthened, danger was riding toward them. That morning, the telegraph operator in town received a message that made his hands shake as he prepared for the ride to the McKenna ranch. The sender's name was Vera Hutchins, and she was bringing a lawyer. The telegram arrived at noon, carried by young Billy Fletcher, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Sam read it twice, his jaw tightening with each word. "Arriving Thursday with legal counsel. Stop demand immediate return of stolen property. Stop will involve federal authorities if necessary. Stop Vera Hutchins." "Stolen property," Sam muttered. "That's what she calls a child." Em saw the paper in Sam's hands and went very still. "She's coming, isn't she?" "She's coming." Instead of the terror Sam expected to see, something else flickered in Em's green eyes, something that looked almost like relief. That afternoon, Em asked Sam to walk with her to Devil's Creek Crossing, where he'd found her. As they stood at the fence post, she began to speak in a voice stronger than he'd heard before. "Mr. Sam, I need to tell you something true. I didn't just wander out here and get lost." Sam waited, sensing this was important. I heard men talking in town about you, about how you were the fairest man in Wyoming territory, how you'd never cheated nobody, how you stood up for what was right, even when it cost you." M's voice grew stronger. "I walked 3 days to get here. I chose this fence post because I knew you'd ride this way after the storm." Sam stared at her. "You planned this?" "Yes, sir. And I can show you how." For the next hour, M demonstrated survival skills that left Sam speechless. She showed him the rabbit snares she'd set, the shelter she'd built in a rock outcropping, the cache of food she'd stolen and hidden. She'd tracked his riding patterns, learned his schedule, positioned herself exactly where she knew he'd find her. "I figured if I looked helpless enough, maybe you'd take me in long enough for me to prove I wasn't worthless," M said. "I never expected this." She gestured at the ranch, at their life together. The revelation changed everything. This wasn't a helpless child who'd stumbled into his care. This was a survivor with intelligence and determination far beyond her years. "M," Sam said carefully, "what else can you do that I don't know about?" She showed him. Her tracking abilities were remarkable. She could read sign like a Comanche scout. Her knowledge of plants and animals came from years of foraging to survive when Vera withheld food. And she could move through the forest without making a sound. "I ain't helpless, Mr. Sam. I never was. I just needed someone to give me a chance." When they returned to the ranch, Tom McKenna was waiting with a suspicious expression. He'd lost his horse, he claimed, and needed help finding it. M studied the ground for a moment, then led them directly to where Tom had hidden the animal in a box canyon. "How did you know?" Tom demanded. "Tracks," M said simply. "Your boot prints led right to him." That evening, word of M's abilities spread through town like wildfire. The narrative shifted from Sam's taking in a helpless cripple to, "What else is that strange girl hiding?" Suddenly, M wasn't just an object of pity. She was something more unsettling. A child who was smarter than she appeared, more capable than anyone had guessed. The whispers in town grew darker. If she could fool them about being helpless, what other deceptions was she capable of? At the saloon, men who'd never given Emma thought began spinning theories. Maybe she was a spy sent by rustlers to scout the McKenna ranch. Maybe she was possessed by something unnatural. Maybe Sam McKenna was being played for a fool by a manipulative child. Constance Whitman held court among the ladies, planting seeds of doubt. "Mark my words," she proclaimed, "that girl will bring nothing but trouble to our community. Samuel McKenna's charitable heart will be his downfall." But M heard none of this speculation. She was too busy watching the horizon, where 3 riders sat motionless on the ridge, watching the ranch through spyglasses. The same 3 riders who'd been there the morning Sam found her. As darkness fell, M whispered to Sam, "They're coming tomorrow, aren't they? All of them." Sam followed her gaze to the ridge, but the riders had vanished into the night like smoke. "Let them come," he said quietly. "We'll be ready." But neither of them was prepared for what rolled across the prairie the next morning. 3 wagons traveling fast toward the ranch, and when M saw the face of the woman in the lead wagon, her face went white as winter snow. The wagons arrived in a cloud of dust and determination. From the lead wagon stepped a woman Sam barely recognized, Vera Hutchins, but transformed. Gone were the dirty calico dresses and stringy hair he remembered. This, Vera, wore a fine black traveling dress, her hair pinned fashionably, her face a perfect mask of grief and respectability. Behind her came a thin man in an expensive suit carrying a leather satchel, and a third man wearing a territorial marshal's badge. "Samuel McKenna," Vera called, her voice carrying across the yard. "I've come for my daughter." Em, watching from the window, went completely mute. All the progress they'd made, all the trust built over careful days, seemed to evaporate. She became the terrified, broken child Sam had found in the snow. The lawyer stepped forward. "I'm Silas Blackwood, representing Mrs. Hutchins in this custody matter. This is Marshal Garrett from Cheyenne. We have legal documents establishing Mrs. Hutchins' rights to the child." Sam stepped onto his porch, his presence filling the space. "I have humanitarian concerns about that child's safety." "Of course you do," Vera said, dabbing at her eyes with a lace handkerchief. "And I understand why you'd want to help. But you see, Emma has problems. She runs away. She lies. She steals. I've been beside myself with worry." The performance was masterful. Vera painted herself as a struggling widow trying to manage a difficult, disabled child. She spoke of Emma's episodes, her tendency toward deception, her ungrateful nature despite all Vera's sacrifices. "She even stole money from me before she ran," Vera continued. $20. All I had for medicine for my poor health. Marshal Garrett, a decent man caught in an uncomfortable situation, tried to be fair. "Mr. McKenna, I understand your concerns, but the law is clear about custody rights. Unless you can prove abuse—" "I can prove it," Sam said firmly. "Doc Patterson examined her. The evidence is clear." Blackwood smiled coldly. "Hearsay and interpretation. Children fall, Mr. McKenna. They bruise easily, especially fragile ones like Emma." Inside the house, Em had retreated so far into herself that she wouldn't respond to Maria's gentle coaxing. The sound of Vera's voice had triggered something deep and terrifying. As the day wore on, pressure mounted from multiple directions. Banker Whitman arrived with papers indicating Sam's ranch loans could be called in if he continued this reckless course. Several prominent townspeople came to reason with him about the dangers of defying legal authority. "You're tearing this community apart," Constance Whitman declared, "all for one damaged child who isn't even yours." But the real blow came that evening when Em finally spoke. Maria found her sitting by the window, staring at nothing. "Mija, what is it?" Em's voice was hollow, empty. "She's going to win, isn't she? She's going to make me go back. Mr. Sam won't let that happen. Mr. Sam's just one man, and she's got the law." That night, as Sam sat by lamplight trying to figure out their legal options, Em appeared beside him. In her good hand, she held a small bundle wrapped in oilcloth. "I need to show you something," she whispered. "Something I've been hiding." She unwrapped 3 letters, written in a careful hand on good paper. They were signed by her father, Robert Hutchins, and dated just before his death 2 years earlier. Sam read them by lamplight, his expression growing grimmer with each word. The letters revealed Robert's growing concern about Vera's treatment of Em. More importantly, they mentioned a small inheritance, $500 in a Denver bank account, left specifically for Em's care and education. "She doesn't know I have these," Em whispered. "I found them hidden in Father's Bible. He wrote them for whoever might care about me someday." "Em," Sam said slowly, "this changes everything. If we can prove that inheritance exists, then you'll know why she really wants me back." Outside, thunder rumbled across the prairie, and lightning illuminated a figure moving past the window. But when Sam looked, nothing was there, except the wind and the growing storm, and the knowledge that tomorrow would bring the fight of their lives. The territorial courthouse in Clearwater Springs had never seen such a crowd. Every seat was filled, with more folks standing along the walls and spilling out onto the street. It seemed like the whole territory had come to watch this battle between law and conscience. Judge Harrison, a weathered man with keen eyes, called for order as the custody hearing began. Em sat between Sam and Doc Patterson, so small she was nearly lost in the adult world that was deciding her fate. Vera's performance was flawless. She took the witness stand in her fine black dress, tearfully recounting her struggles as a widow trying to raise a difficult child. Her voice broke as she described Emma's willful disobedience and tendency to fabricate stories about her care. "I've loved that child as my own since her father died," Vera declared, dabbing her eyes. "But she's always been different. Her arm, you understand, and the way it affects her mind. She becomes confused, makes up tales." Lawyer Blackwood guided her testimony with practiced skill. Yes, Emma had old bruises, but she was clumsy due to her disability. Yes, she was malnourished, but she refused to eat, throwing tantrums at mealtimes. Yes, she'd been found nearly frozen, but she'd run away despite Vera's attempts to keep her safe. "And now," Vera continued, "she's even stolen money from me. $20, my medicine money, before she disappeared." The crowd murmured sympathetically. Vera had crafted a narrative that explained every piece of evidence while painting herself as the long-suffering guardian. When Sam took the stand, he spoke plainly about finding Em half dead, about the systematic signs of abuse Doc Patterson had documented. But Blackwood was ready for him too. "Mr. McKenna," the lawyer said smoothly, "isn't it true that you're a childless widower looking to fill the void in your life? I'm looking to protect a child who needs protecting. And isn't it true that you formed an emotional attachment that might cloud your judgment about what's best for Emma?" Sam's jaw tightened, but he answered honestly. "I care about her, yes. That doesn't make me wrong about what I've seen." Doc Patterson's testimony about Em's injuries was dismissed as interpretation of common childhood accidents. The community was divided. Some spoke for Sam's character, others worried about legal precedent and social disruption. Through it all, Em sat silent, too traumatized by Vera's presence to speak in her own defense. Then Sam asked to present new evidence. He stood and carefully placed the 3 letters on the judge's bench. "These are letters from Emma's father, written before his death, expressing concern about Mrs. Hutchins's treatment of the child. More importantly, they reference money left specifically for Emma's care." Blackwood objected, but Judge Harrison was intrigued. He read the letters carefully, his expression growing thoughtful. "Mrs. Hutchins," the judge said slowly, "these letters mention a bank account in Denver containing $500 designated for the child's education and welfare. Can you explain this?" For the first time, Vera's composure cracked slightly. I don't know anything about any money. Robert never mentioned any inheritance to me." But the damage was done. Sam could see understanding dawning in the judge's eyes, and suddenly Vera's desperate need to retrieve Em made perfect sense. "Your Honor," Sam said firmly, "I believe Mrs. Hutchins' interest in the child has less to do with love than with that inheritance money." Vera's mask slipped completely. "That money should be mine," she burst out. "I cared for her. I fed her. I clothed her. If there's money, I deserve it for my troubles." The courtroom erupted. In her moment of anger, Vera had revealed her true motivation, and everyone could see it. Judge Harrison called for recess, but Vera wasn't finished. Outside the courthouse, she cornered Blackwood with desperation in her eyes. "You don't understand," she hissed. "I'm carrying a child. I need that money to start fresh, to give my baby a chance. I can't let some crippled brat keep me from providing for my own blood." But Vera had another secret she hadn't shared with anyone. The inheritance money was already gone. She'd forged documents years ago and spent every penny. Now she needed M back, not just for the money, but to cover up her crime. As the crowd dispersed, waiting for Judge Harrison's decision, M finally spoke. She tugged at Sam's coat and whispered words that would echo through the courthouse the next day. "Mr. Sam, she's not just mean. She's scared. And scared people do desperate things." That night, as storm clouds gathered over Clearwater Springs, no one knew that Vera Hutchins was already planning her most desperate move yet, one that would force a final confrontation with consequences that would reshape the entire community's understanding of what family truly means. The next morning, Judge Harrison reopened the hearing with a packed courtroom holding its breath. M, fortified by a night of Sam's quiet encouragement and Maria's fierce protection, stood to address the court. "Your Honor," she said, her young voice carrying clearly through the room, "I'd like to tell you about my stepmother." The silence was complete as M spoke with devastating simplicity about years of systematic cruelty. She told of being locked in the cellar for days, of being beaten for dropping dishes with her withered arm, of being told repeatedly that she was worthless, a burden, something to be ashamed of. She used to say my arm made me look like a broken doll, and nobody wants a broken doll, M said quietly. But Mr. Sam, he never looked at my arm like it was ugly. He looked at me like I was worth something. Her testimony was not dramatic or emotional. It was the simple, devastating truth told by a child who had found her voice at last. Doc Patterson followed with medical evidence that corroborated every word. The old breaks in M's ribs, the scars hidden under her hair, the malnutrition that spoke of systematic deprivation. Judge Harrison announced he would investigate the inheritance claims before making his final ruling, postponing the decision for 2 days. Outside the courthouse, Vera's desperation reached dangerous levels. She cornered Marshall Garrett with tears streaming down her face. "You don't understand. I need that child back. She's all I have left of her father, and I'm carrying his brother's baby. This is about family." But Marshall Garrett had been watching faces during the testimony. "Ma'am, if that child is telling the truth about the abuse—" "She's disturbed," Vera screamed, abandoning all pretense. "Her mind is twisted by that arm. She makes up stories, she lies, and that McKenna man has poisoned her against me." Blackwood tried to calm his client, but Vera was beyond reason. "If the law won't give me what's mine, I'll take it myself. That inheritance money is legally mine as the child's guardian, and I intend to collect it." What Vera didn't know was that several townspeople had overheard her outburst. By evening, word had spread through Clearwater Springs that Mrs. Hutchins was threatening to take M by force if necessary. At the McKenna Ranch, Sam gathered his men in the bunkhouse. These were cowboys who'd worked for him for years, men who'd come to respect M's courage and Sam's moral stand. "I won't ask any man to break the law," Sam said quietly, "but if anyone comes to take that child against her will, they'll have to go through me to do it. Any of you who want to ride out now, there'll be no hard feelings." Not a single man moved toward the door. Tom McKenna, who'd been wrestling with his conscience for days, finally spoke up. "Uncle Sam, I was wrong. About M. About what matters." If you'll have me, I'd like to stay and help." That night, Em found Sam on the porch, watching the road. She sat beside him in comfortable silence before speaking. "Mr. Sam, will you teach me to shoot your rifle?" Sam looked down at her serious young face. "Em, why would you want to learn that?" "Because if she comes for me, I won't go back, not alive. And I'd rather know how to fight than just wait to be taken." The next morning brought news that chilled Sam's blood. Deputy U.S. Marshal Pike had returned with federal orders demanding Em's immediate transfer to Vera's custody, regardless of Judge Harrison's ongoing investigation. "The law's the law, Sam," Sheriff Davies said apologetically. "I've got no choice but to enforce it." But Em had vanished. She'd slipped away at dawn with Sam's rifle and enough supplies for several days. Pinned to her pillow was a note. "I won't let them make you choose between me and the law. When it's safe, I'll come home. M." As Sam read the note, riders appeared on the horizon, not just Vera and the marshals, but a dozen hard men she'd recruited from the saloons and gambling halls. They surrounded the ranch like a wolf pack, ready to tear it apart to find one small girl. But Em was gone, vanished into the wilderness, with skills none of them had imagined she possessed. The hunters were about to discover they were dealing with something far more dangerous than a helpless child. They were facing a survivor who had learned to disappear like smoke on the wind. The siege of the McKenna Ranch was about to begin, but the question remained, who was really hunting whom? The morning sun was just cresting the eastern ridge when the sound of approaching hoofbeats shattered the tense quiet that had settled over the McKenna Ranch. Sam stepped onto his porch, rifle in hand, expecting to see Marshal Pike returning with reinforcements, or Vera coming with more hired guns. Instead, he found himself staring at the most unexpected sight in all his years on the frontier. Judge Harrison himself, riding toward the ranch with the bearing of a man on a mission. Behind him rode two territorial rangers, their badges glinting in the early light, and even more surprising, Sheriff Davies from town. "Well, I'll be dad-blamed," Sam muttered, lowering his rifle. The siege lines that had formed overnight, Vera's hired men on one side, Sam's cowboys on the other, with federal marshals caught awkwardly in between, suddenly seemed less important as all parties watched the procession approach. Marshal Pike stepped forward, confusion clear on his weathered face. "Judge Harrison, sir, I wasn't expecting you. We have the situation well in hand here." "Do you now, Marshal?" Harrison replied, dismounting with the deliberate movements of a man who'd spent too many years in the saddle. "Because from what I've learned in the past 48 hours, this situation is anything but in hand." Vera pushed through the crowd of men, her fine dress now wrinkled and dusty, her carefully arranged hair disheveled from a sleepless night. "Judge Harrison, thank the Lord you're here. This man has stolen my daughter, and these federal marshals seem reluctant to enforce the law." "Mrs. Hutchins," Harrison said with ice-cold politeness, "I've come here precisely to enforce the law. All of it." He reached into his saddlebags and withdrew a thick leather portfolio, the kind used for important legal documents. The morning breeze caught the papers as he opened it, and Sam could see official seals and signatures. "Marshal Pike, Mrs. Hutchins, Mr. McKenna," Judge Harrison called out, his voice carrying the authority of 30 years on the territorial bench. "I've completed a thorough investigation into this matter, and I have findings that require the immediate attention of everyone present." The crowd gathered in Sam's front yard like spectators at a public hanging. Cowboys rubbed elbows with federal marshals. Hired guns stood next to townspeople who'd ridden out to witness the conclusion of this drama. And through it all, the morning air crackled with tension. First, Harrison announced, his voice cutting through the murmur of the crowd. "Regarding the inheritance mentioned in Robert Hutchins' letters. I sent telegrams to the First National Bank of Denver and received a most illuminating response." He pulled out a yellow telegram and read from it. "The account exists, containing $500 as of Robert Hutchins's death in 1883. However, the money was withdrawn in full on September 15, 1883, using documents bearing Emma Hutchins' signature and witnessed by one Silas Blackwood, attorney at law." Vera's face went from flushed to pale in the span of a heartbeat. Blackwood, who'd been standing confidently beside his client, suddenly found great interest in examining his boots. "That's preposterous!" Vera shrieked, but her voice held a note of panic now. "I never touched that money. I don't know anything about any bank account." "Second," Judge Harrison continued relentlessly, "I received testimony from 3 bank employees in Denver who witnessed the transaction. They were suspicious at the time because Emma Hutchins appeared to be approximately 11 years old, yet the signature on the withdrawal papers belonged to someone with an adult's handwriting." The crowd was dead silent now, understanding beginning to dawn on their faces. "Furthermore," Harrison said, producing another document, "I have here a sworn affidavit from a hotel clerk in Denver who saw Mrs. Hutchins and Mr. Blackwood celebrating their successful transaction with champagne and discussing their plans to invest the money in a failing silver mine near Leadville." "Those are lies!" Vera screamed, her composure completely shattered. "Fabrications! That money belonged to me anyway. I cared for the brat for 2 years. I fed her, clothed her, kept a roof over her head." "Which brings me to my third point," Harrison said, his voice now carrying the weight of final judgment. "Mrs. Hutchins, you are under arrest for fraud, forgery, theft, and child endangerment. Rangers Wilson and Clark, please take her into custody." As the Rangers moved toward Vera, she broke down completely. All pretense of respectability, all carefully constructed lies, all the performance of the grieving stepmother, it all crumbled in an instant. "You don't understand," she wailed, falling to her knees in the dirt. "I needed that money. I'm carrying a child now, and I have nothing. That crippled little brat was worth nothing to anyone. At least the money could do some good for my baby." The words hung in the morning air like poison. Even the hired guns she'd recruited looked disgusted. Tom McKenna spat in the dirt and turned away. Maria Santos crossed herself and muttered a prayer in Spanish. But Judge Harrison wasn't finished. As the Rangers secured Vera in shackles, he turned to address the entire gathering, his voice taking on a different tone, personal, reflective, heavy with emotion. "I have one more matter to address," he said quietly. "This case has forced me to examine not just the letter of the law, but the spirit behind it. You see, I understand Emma's situation better than anyone here might imagine." He paused, removing his hat and holding it against his chest. The morning wind stirred his gray hair as he seemed to gather himself for what came next. 40 years ago, I was 7 years old, standing alone on a train platform in Kansas. My parents had brought me there and simply walked away. You see, I was born with a club foot, and they decided that a crippled boy wasn't worth the trouble of raising. I was going to die on that platform, a child abandoned to the elements, just like Emma was abandoned on that trail. The silence was so complete that Sam could hear his own heartbeat. Judge Harrison's revelation was reframing everything they thought they understood about this case, about justice, about the law itself. I was saved by one thing, a stranger who chose to see a child worth saving instead of a burden worth discarding. That man was Circuit Judge William Harrison. He had no legal right to take me, no blood claim, no official standing. But he chose love over law, compassion over convenience, and he saved my life. Harrison's voice grew stronger, more passionate. I took his name when he legally adopted me 6 months later, and I followed his profession to honor the debt I owed, not just to him, but to every abandoned child who needs someone to stand up and say, "This stops here." Sam felt his heart pounding as he understood what was coming. Around the yard, he could see the same realization dawning on other faces. This wasn't just about M anymore. This was about something much larger. "Today," Judge Harrison declared, his voice ringing across the Wyoming prairie, "I am establishing a legal precedent in territorial court. When blood family fails in its sacred duty to protect and nurture a child, chosen family, family built on love and commitment rather than accident of birth, can and will supersede those blood rights under territorial law." Movement in the barn caught Sam's eye, and his heart nearly stopped. M had emerged from her hiding place, drawn by the sounds of Vera's arrest and the judge's words. She stood in the barn doorway, still small, still bearing the physical marks of her abuse, but with something new in her bearing: hope. Judge Harrison saw her too, and walked slowly toward the barn. "Emma Hutchins," he said gently, "I have a question for you. Do you wish to become Emma McKenna, with all the rights, protections, and love that such adoption provides?" Em looked up at Sam with tears streaming down her face, but her voice was strong and clear. "Yes, sir. More than anything in this whole wide world." Harrison turned to Sam. "And Samuel McKenna, do you swear before these witnesses to love, protect, and raise this child as your own daughter with all the sacred obligations that parenthood entails?" Sam's voice was rough with emotion, but his words rang clear. "I do, Your Honor. Before God and these good people, I surely do." Judge Harrison smiled for the first time in the proceedings, and it transformed his entire face. "Then, by the power vested in me by the territory of Wyoming and in the presence of these witnesses, I declare this adoption legal, binding, and blessed. Emma, welcome to your new family, your home at last." As cheers erupted from the crowd, cowboys whooping, townspeople applauding, even some of the federal marshals nodding approval, Vera's shrieks of rage and threats were drowned out completely. The rangers loaded her into their wagon like a sack of grain, her hired guns melting away now that their employer was headed for territorial prison. Blackwood tried to slip away in the confusion, but Sheriff Davies was ready for him. "Not so fast, counselor. You've got some explaining to do about those forged documents." But all the legal proceedings, all the arrests, all the formal declarations, none of it mattered as much as the moment when M, now legally Emma McKenna, walked slowly across the yard to where Sam stood. She looked up at the man who'd chosen to save her, who'd fought the whole world for her right to be loved, who'd given her not just his name, but his heart. And then, in a voice that carried across the prairie and straight into the souls of everyone present, she spoke the words that made grown cowboys weep. "Thank you, Papa." The word hung in the morning air like a benediction, transforming strangers into family, law into love, and ending a battle that had torn a community apart, but ultimately made it stronger than it had ever been before. 3 weeks later, the same courthouse that had witnessed such bitter division now hosted a celebration. Emma McKenna, in a new blue dress that Maria had sewn special for the occasion, stood beside Sam as the adoption papers were officially signed and sealed. Judge Harrison, who had stayed in town to ensure the legal proceedings were properly completed, smiled as he watched Em carefully write her new name in the family Bible. "Emma McKenna," she whispered, testing how it sounded. "Emma McKenna." "That's right, mija," Maria beamed, tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. "You are familia now." The ceremony was simple but profound. Sam placed his father's pocket watch, a McKenna family treasure for 3 generations, into Em's small hand. "This belonged to my daddy, and his daddy before him. Now it's yours, and someday you'll pass it to your children." Em cradled the gold timepiece like it was the most precious thing in the world. "I'll take good care of it, Papa." The words still sent shivers through Sam's heart. He'd never thought to hear a child call him that, had given up that dream when his wife died in childbirth years ago. But here was Em, not born to him, but chosen by him, and choosing him in return. The community's transformation was remarkable. Families who had shunned Em now invited her to play with their children. Mrs. Patterson organized a collection to buy Em school supplies. Even Constance Whitman, shamed by her earlier judgment, made a point of welcoming Em to the church ladies' auxiliary. "I was wrong about you, child," she admitted to Em one Sunday after service. "You've shown more grace and courage than many grown folks I know." The ripple effects of Sam and Em's story spread far beyond Clearwater Springs. Judge Harrison's legal precedent encouraged other families to adopt orphaned children. Within a year, 7 more adoptions had taken place in the territory, each one creating family bonds stronger than blood alone could forge. Tom McKenna had undergone his own transformation. The resentment that had driven him to sabotage Em's early days at the ranch had been replaced by genuine affection for his new cousin. He moved permanently to the ranch, becoming the brother Em had never had. "You know," he told her one evening as they worked together in the barn, "I used to think Uncle Sam's money and land were what made a man rich. But watching you two together, I reckon I understand wealth different now." Doc Patterson made regular visits, not as a doctor treating abuse, but as a friend checking on Em's remarkable recovery. Her physical health improved dramatically with proper nutrition and care, but more importantly, her spirit had healed. The terrified, broken child who'd whispered, "Please don't send me back," had become a confident young woman who knew her worth. The foal Em had helped deliver that first night became her special project. She named him Hope and trained him with patience and skill that amazed even Sam's experienced cowboys. Her withered arm, once a source of shame, became simply part of who she was, different but not diminished. One evening, as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the Wyoming sky, Em asked Sam a question that had been on her mind. "Papa, what do you think happened to Vera?" Sam considered his words carefully. "She's in prison, Em. She'll likely serve 5 years for what she did. But maybe that'll give her time to think about the choices she made. Do you think she'll ever be sorry? Really sorry, not just sorry she got caught?" "I don't know, sweetheart. That's between her and the Almighty. All I know is that her mistakes led you to us, and I can't bring myself to regret that." Em nodded thoughtfully. At 13 now, she was developing wisdom beyond her years. "I hope her baby finds a good family. Every child deserves what I found here." That simple statement summed up everything Sam loved about his daughter. Despite all she'd suffered, Em's heart remained open to compassion, even for those who had hurt her. Spring arrived with a burst of new life on the ranch. Em worked alongside Sam and the Cowboys, her skills earning their respect and affection. She could track a lost calf through rough country, predict weather changes by reading the sky, and Gentle, the wildest horse, with patience and understanding. "That girl's got more sand than most grown men," old Pete Morrison observed, watching Em break a young mustang with quiet determination. "McKenna blood or not, she's got the heart for this life." As the first anniversary of Em's rescue approached, Sam suggested they visit Devil's Creek Crossing, where it all began. They rode out together on a crisp morning, father and daughter comfortable in each other's company. The fence post where Sam had found Em still stood, weathered but sturdy. Em dismounted and placed her hand on the rough wood. "I was so scared that morning," she said quietly. "But even then, something inside me knew you'd be the one to find me." "How could you know that?" Em smiled, the same mischievous grin that had won over every cowboy on the ranch. "Because I'd heard tell of Big Sam McKenna, the fairest man in Wyoming Territory, and I figured a fair man might see past what was broken to what was worth fixing." They stood in comfortable silence, remembering that desperate child and the man who'd chosen compassion over convenience. The torn red scarf was long gone, replaced by a warm blue one that matched Em's eyes and the McKenna family colors. As they prepared to ride home, Em spotted something that made her heart skip: fresh wagon tracks leading toward the ranch. "Papa, we've got visitors." Sam studied the tracks with growing excitement. "Em, unless I miss my guess, those tracks belong to Judge Harrison, and he only comes calling when he's got news worth sharing." They spurred their horses toward home, both eager to hear what had brought the judge back to their corner of Wyoming. Whatever it was, they'd face it together, father and daughter, chosen family, hearts bound by love stronger than blood, and trust deeper than law. The McKenna Ranch had become more than a cattle operation. It had become proof that family isn't just who you're born to. It's who chooses to love you when the world says you're not worth loving. Sometimes, folks wonder what makes a family. Is it blood that runs through your veins, or love that flows between hearts? Big Sam McKenna learned that winter of 1885 what any man worth his salt comes to know. Family isn't about who gave you life, but about who's willing to fight for your right to live it with dignity. Em McKenna grew up strong on that Wyoming ranch, her withered arm never slowing her down once she understood her true worth. She married a good man when the time came, raised fine children who never knew the shame she'd once carried, and lived to see women get the vote. She became one of the most respected ranchers in the territory, known for her fairness and her fierce protection of anyone society tried to discard. But she never forgot that cold morning when a stranger chose to see her as precious rather than damaged. You see, that's the thing about real character. It shows itself clearest when nobody's watching, when doing right costs more than doing nothing, and when the world tells you that some folks just don't matter. Sam McKenna knew better. He understood what every man who's lived long enough learns. We're judged not by what we accumulate, but by what we're willing to sacrifice for others. The McKenna Ranch still stands today, passed down through Em's children and their children. Above the main gate hangs a sign with words Em carved there herself: "Every soul has worth." Simple words, but they changed a whole community's understanding of what family means. Judge Harrison's legal precedent spread throughout the territories and beyond. Chosen families gained legal recognition, protecting thousands of children who might otherwise have been trapped in situations like Em's. The case of McKenna Fur. Hutchins became required reading in law schools, not just for its legal innovation, but for its reminder that law should serve humanity, not the other way around. In a time when the world seems to have forgotten the value of loyalty, the power of quiet kindness, and the strength found in protecting the vulnerable, maybe we need to remember men like Big Sam McKenna. Maybe we need to ask ourselves, When we see someone the world has discarded, do we see worthless damage, or do we see a child of God waiting for someone to choose love over convenience? That little girl who whispered, "Please don't send me back," grew up to save dozens of other children from similar fates. She used her inheritance, not the money Vera had stolen, but the legacy of love Sam had given her, to establish homes for abandoned children throughout the West. Every child who found safety there learned the same lesson Em had learned. Your worth isn't determined by your wounds, but by the love you're willing to give and receive. That's the kind of story that sticks with you, friends, the kind that reminds us why we tell these tales in the first place. Because sometimes, in the remembering, we find the courage to love like that ourselves. We remember that every broken child, every discarded soul, every person the world says doesn't matter, they're all waiting for their Sam McKenna moment. They're all hoping someone will choose to see their worth. The question is, will we be the ones brave enough to choose love when it costs us something? Will we be the ones who see potential where others see problems? Will we be the ones who understand that the deepest families aren't built on blood, but on the daily choice to stand by each other when standing alone would be easier? If this story stirred something in your heart, I'd be grateful if you'd share it with someone who needs reminding that their worth isn't determined by their wounds, but by the love they're willing to give and receive. Because that's how we keep Sam and Em's legacy alive, by choosing every day to see the worth in every soul we meet.